These unidentified flying objects don't only exist in the form of a glowing ball of some vague nature, but rather have a definite technological body. Americans have always been interested in the techno-magical legacy of Germany. There is absolutely no doubt about this. Suddenly, the inexplicable occurs. The expedition, designed to last 6 months, is quickly aborted after 2 months, leaving the Antarctic coast deserted. It was an actual retreat. At the beginning of 1947, yet another expedition by the American explorer, Richard Byrd, arrived on Antarctic shores. It was a very strange expedition. Unlike his previous 3, this one was completely financed by the US Navy. Operation High Jump was its code name. Under the command of Admiral R. Byrd, there was a powerful military squadron. An aircraft carrier, 12 surface ships, 1 submarine, more than 20 airplanes and helicopters, and about 5,000 people on staff. You will agree, a strange team for a scientific expedition. On December 2nd, 1946, before the start of his expedition, Admiral Byrd, at a press conference, said, "My expedition is military in nature," giving no further details. At the end of January 1947, full-scale aerial reconnaissance began surveying the Antarctic region of Queen Maud Land. It all went to plan in the first weeks. Tens of thousands of photos were taken. Suddenly, the inexplicable happened. The 6-month expedition terminated after only 2 months, fleeing the Antarctic coast. It was a real fast retreat. They lost a destroyer, almost half their carrier-based aircraft, and dozens of sailors and officers. To commission investigation members of the US Congress, Admiral Byrd said the following: "In the event of another war, America can be attacked by an enemy that has the ability to fly from pole to pole with incredible speed." What made the Americans flee? In 1945, 18 months before Admiral Byrd's expedition began, 2 German submarines entered Mar del Plata, a port in Argentina, surrendering to authorities. These were no ordinary submarines. They were from the so-called Führer convoy. This was a top-secret fleet fulfilling missions, details of which have remained a secret till now. The submarine crews were reluctant to cooperate. Even so, the Americans learned a few things. The commander of U-boat U-530 spoke of his involvement in an operation codenamed Valkyrie 2. 2 weeks before the war's end, the U-boat U-530 left the quay, heading for the shores of Antarctica. On board the submarine were passengers with faces covered in bandages, as well as Third Reich relics. The commander of another U-boat, U-977, Heinz Schaefer, later testified that he followed the same route. It was found that German submarines repeatedly followed the Antarctic route, but why go there? Antarctica. In 1820, it was discovered by 2 Russian explorers, Gelenkschmerzen and Lazarev. Since then, this mysterious continent, bigger than Europe, continues to attract explorers like a magnet. However, the 10-meter-high sheer icy shores made the continent impregnable for many years. For almost a century, Antarctica remained unknown. Only coastlines were marked on the map. Suddenly, this distant and useless icy continent aroused a strange interest in the Germans. Large funds were allocated for Antarctic study. In the late 30s, 2 research expeditions were arranged. This happened just before the war was due to start. In January 1939, Two catapult-controlled airplanes, the Passat and Boreas, took off from the deck of the Schwabenland. They began patrolling Queen Maud Land. In 3 weeks, Luftwaffe pilots with metal pennons marked with swastikas managed to secure for the Third Reich territory the size of Germany. It was called New Swabia. In April 1939, the experienced polar explorer, Captain Alfred Richter, wrote, "I've completed the mission entrusted to me by Air Marshal Göring." For the first time, German aircraft flew over the Antarctic continent. Every 25 kilometers, we dropped pendants, covering an area of about 600,000 square kilometers, of which 350,000 square kilometers were photographed. Göring's flying aces had done their job. This unusual mission then passed to the Führer's Sea Wolves, the U-boats commanded by Admiral Karl Dönitz. In secrecy, German U-boats set course to the Earth's end, the icy Antarctic shores. Later, Karl Dönitz let slip a strange phrase: "My submariners have found a true paradise on Earth." In 1943, at the peak of the war with Russia, Grand Admiral Dönitz uttered another, no less mysterious phrase: "The German submarine fleet is proud. At the other end of the world, we've made an impregnable citadel for our Führer." Back then, the Grand Admiral of German Naval Fleet's words were only understood by a small circle of insiders. Today, we can only hypothesize what the Grand Admiral meant. Recently, huge underground lakes were found, a kilometer deep under the ice. The lake's temperature is 18 degrees Celsius. Located above the water's surface are dome-like vaults filled with warm air. It's possible that from these heated lakes, a constant river of warm water flows into the ocean. For thousands of years, these warm rivers may have formed large underground ice tunnels, perfect for the construction of secret bases. From the ocean's edge, any submarine could easily pass under the coastal ice into the tunnels. Here it was, a completed base, immune from storms and polar cold, totally hidden from outsiders, and out of the enemy's reach. If the Germans had to decide on a location for a secret base or make a secret zone, that seemed from the outside to be totally inaccessible. The polar zones, including Antarctica, would be a wholly suitable area to find this level of security. According to witness testimony and other documents, the Nazis had in fact managed to create a top-secret Antarctic base. Its code name, the Base 211. At the start of 1939, regular trips were made between Antarctica and Germany in a specially equipped and modified research vessel named the Swabia. Mine-constructing equipment and other machinery, including railroads, trucks, and giant tunnel-building mills, were transported to Queen Maud Land. At the same time, scientists, engineers, and highly skilled workers arrived. Why was Germany in need of such a remote base? There are various assumptions. Some believed that Germany wanted control of the southern seas. Others, the Germans were attracted to vast Antarctica natural resources, such as uranium, which is essential for the creation of superweapons. Many assumed that in case of defeat in the war, Antarctica would be a safe haven for the elite of the Third Reich. By 1942, transfer of inhabitants to New Swabia had begun, including scientists, engineers, members, and representatives of the Nazi Party and the German state. Certain secret industrial technologies were also transferred from Germany. Post-war, the Americans recruited German scientists to work in the United States, but were shocked to find thousands of highly qualified Third Reich specialists had vanished and weren't listed as dead. Over 100 submarines had also vanished, never to be found. It's clear that American intelligence obtained information concerning the fact that part of the Nazi legacy, its technical potential in terms of researchers and scientists, had evacuated from Germany, and naturally, the Antarctica polar zone became the center of their attention. There's also the testimony from German submariners, who surrendered to Argentine authorities. It seems all this extremely alarmed the Americans. At the end of 1946, the famous polar explorer and admiral of the U.S. Navy, Richard Byrd, received the order to destroy the Nazi base in Antarctica. But things went wrong. The resistance met by the American squadron, even now, raises many questions. Admiral Byrd not only reported fighter jets with incredible capacities to Washington, he also discussed an attack on the expedition by strange flying saucers. They emerged from the water at high speed, causing heavy damage to the expedition. On February 26, 1947, a battle took place, which is described by a member of the expedition, an experienced pilot named John Sirison. They flew vertically out of the water in a fury, slipping between the masts of the ships with such speed that the airflow perturbed and dislodged the radio antenna. I didn't have time to blink an eye. The two Corsair from the Casablanca were slain by some kind of mysterious ray, shot from the nose section of the flying saucers. They then dived into the water near the ships. At the time, I was on the Casablanca's deck and saw it as you now see me. I didn't understand. These objects were silent as they floated between ships like a satanic beast spitting deadly fire. Suddenly, I saw the destroyer, Murdoch, which was about 120 feet away. The flames flashed and it began to sink. Despite the danger, rescue teams and lifeboats were immediately dispatched to the disaster site from other ships. The nightmare lasted about 20 minutes. When the saucers again dived under the water, we evaluated our losses. They were terrifying. Who did these flying saucers belong to? Could it have been Nazi Germany? After the war, in Nazi secret archives, intriguing photos and drawings were discovered. They proved that German scientists were actually engaged in the development of disc-shaped aircrafts. At the time, nothing like this existed. How had Nazi scientists managed to make such a technological leap? Ahnenerbe Society, the most mysterious organization in the Third Reich. Even now, the secret services of leading powers hunt for its secrets. But why? It's simple. This was the only known historical structure engaged in the study of the occult and mysticism to have state funding and support. No organization in the world had at its disposal such a volume of data or had such influence on the development of occult technology as the Ahnenerbe. The Ahnenerbe founders were drawn from the highest ranks of the Third Reich. Research on occult knowledge and paranormal phenomena by the Ahnenerbe received blessings from SS Reichsführer Himmler, who not only acted on his own initiative, but also with instructions from Adolf Hitler. Officially, the society was founded in 1935 and was intended to explore the historical roots of the German nation. Ahnenerbe, when translated, means legacy of the ancestors. However, the society's scope of interest was broader than ancient German history study. Third Reich leaders understood an army's size wasn't necessary to win future wars. Therefore, they adopted the so-called concept of qualitative superiority. Therefore, one can win a war with relatively low quantitative forces while utilizing high qualitative forces. To provide them with qualitative superiority, the Ahnenerbe brought in specialists in the occult non-traditional and paranormal knowledge. In order to achieve a breakthrough in an area where their opponents would not be competent. Nazi ideology was based on the theory that in the past there was a powerful Earth civilization with access to the secrets of the universe. Somewhere, encrypted and scattered, this higher knowledge was preserved. Specifically, they were tasked with reviving the superhuman in Germany. in their role as ancient Aryan descendants. They were very interested in Atlantis. Their scientists believed it, the Aryan race's native home. Therefore, Germany was the rightful heir to the Atlantean technological knowledge. Legend says it's where giant ships and flying vehicles were driven by an unknown force to search for hidden knowledge, to seek knowledge of the history of civilization. The cradle of civilization, they assumed, was of German origin, and all world civilizations had German roots. The Ahnenerbe's search began just prior to war's start. There's no doubt that Ahnenerbe members knew of an amazing map that was discovered by historians in 1929. The map was created in the early 16th century by the famous Turkish admiral Piri Reis. The shocking fact is the way the map's detail mirrors the real Antarctica coast. This was 300 years before the continent's official discovery. In this map notes, the admiral wrote that he drew it from numerous sources, some at least 3,000 years old. But the most puzzling thing was the coastline of Antarctica, which is shown without its ice cover. The maps provokes the imagination even today. Here's the verdict of a US Air Force specialist. The coastline was plotted on this map before it was covered in ice. The thickness of the ice in this area is about 1.5 kilometers. We do not have any suggestions how this data could have been obtained in 1513. The international experts gave the Piri Reis map a thorough examination and concluded it was more precise than 20th century maps. Seismic analysis confirmed the fact, which scientists until recently were unaware. Some of the mountains, once considered a single massif, proved in reality to be separate islands, as stated on the old map. 70 years ago, one can imagine the impact of the Piri Reis map on the founders of Aryan race theory. It brought hope to the search for the techno-magical heritage of Atlantis. One hypothesis states that Antarctica is the former Atlantis, buried under the ice as a result of polar displacement. Once they knew these maps existed, they also realized secret knowledge could be stored elsewhere. But where? Ahnenerbe secret expeditions began the search for ancient relics and manuscripts around the world, from Tibet to South America. Notably, they hunted for Knights Templar archives, which contain indications they visited America long before Columbus. Apparently, the Templars owned secret manuscripts similar to the Piri Reis map. It suggests they knew something vital about Antarctica. In the occupied territories, SS Special Commando units removed archives and libraries. The Ahnenerbe confiscated libraries of theological facilities, various secret societies, as soon as space was allocated. The Ahnenerbe collected a huge library. According to the librarian from one of the Postonsky libraries, in March of 1945, he witnessed Soviet troops approaching German territory. The Ahnenerbe were evacuating a library, carrying away 140,000 volumes. The library catalog would be very interesting. It's possible the Ahnenerbe learned something incredible about Antarctica. They made the study of this continent one of the main Nazi leadership goals. Actually, the SS were after very specific knowledge. The Grail Cup, together with the Holy Spear, opens the way to world domination. Hitler became aware of this legend before World War I. The Spear of Destiny was safely kept in the Vienna Museum. Hitler possessed the spear in 1938 after Germany annexed Austria. In order to rule the world, he needed the Grail Cup to combine the legendary spear, symbol of the active male principle, and the world's scientific knowledge, with the cup, symbol of the active female principle and the symbol of wisdom. This is the dominate idea which preoccupied the Third Reich's elite, to fuse the latest scientific achievements with centuries-old knowledge, even in the absence of a rational explanation. It could have been an attractive and productive idea. if it wasn't for the purpose the Nazis pursued: supreme reign over the world. To enslave it for the chosen race, utilizing occult knowledge and technology. For scientific research, the Ahnenerbe employed elite staff, mainly world-famous scientists and hundreds of employees from more than 50 university departments. The Ahnenerbe engaged in the study of maths, astronomy, genetics, medicine, and the occult development of unconventional weapons, plus psychological and psychotropic methods of mass influence. They explored occult science, religious and mystical practices, exploring people's paranormal abilities. The Ahnenerbe was seriously engaged in this research. The factual evidence for this are the Ahnenerbe directives by their management, which included Himmler before the war began in 1939. Studies were carried out concerning the paranormal abilities of employees of the Ahnenerbe. The results were recorded on personal files. When the war started, officers with the paranormal abilities, along with others who displayed paranormal skills, were merged into a single Ahnenerbe department. Unfortunately, there are no records on what this department was working on, or more importantly, what results were achieved. One of the main objectives pursued by the Ahnenerbe experts was the use of paranormal abilities to contact unknown beings, or outsiders as they called them. The aim was to obtain, from highly developed extraterrestrial and ancient terrestrial civilizations, superior technological knowledge. It had already occurred. December 1919. Secret Thule Society members, the Ahnenerbe's predecessor, are gathered at the Alps foothills in a farmhouse near Berchtesgaden. Among the selected were two experienced mediums, or contactees, as we say today. One of them hides under the mysterious name of Sigrun. The other is Maria Orsic from Zagreb. She speaks of strange things in a trance state. From a civilization in the Taurus constellation, she receives incredible technical information. This knowledge shocked no one. On the contrary, it attracted huge interest, as it concerned the construction of an unusual flying vehicle which could alter the flow of time around it, a step towards the dream of the secret society, a time machine penetrating deep into history, obtaining the knowledge of ancient, high civilizations. Here you see the picture of an aircraft with the signature of the world-famous German scientist and inventor Victor Schauberger. This received knowledge passes to scientists for translation into clearer technical data for engineering. By 1922, the first model had been built. The device had 3 parallel discs. When brought into motion, the upper and lower discs rotate in opposite directions, creating a very strong magnetic field and anti-gravity effect. If the evidence can be trusted, this design not only floats in the air, but warps the structure of time around it. It is believed this was the prototype of future techno-magical flying saucers, based on non-classical flight principles. These super discs were developed by a special technological unit of the SS, connected to the Ahnenerbe. 2 basic ideas dominated the minds of senior management in Nazi Germany. First was the creation of a superhuman. The second, very important concept, was the mastery of techno-magic energies. This not only included the possibility of mastering nuclear energy, but also, of course, disc-shaped flying devices. For example, creating a fundamentally new type of flying technology. It involved not only mediums and engineers, the search for ideas went in all directions, but also historians. Even before the war, Ahnenerbe expeditions from Germany returned with hundreds of ancient Sanskrit, Chinese, and other Oriental language parchments. They were studied very carefully. Werner von Braun, the pioneering engineer and inventor in the fields of rocketry and space travel, later utters, We have learned a great deal for ourselves in these papers. Expedition results are reported to Hitler personally. Some of it inspired the Third Reich leader to such a degree that thoughts of wonder weapons and spaceflight didn't leave him until the war's end. Designers try their best, but knowing rotation principles and building anti-gravity super disks aren't enough. An engine's needed, and they don't have it. The technology is hopelessly behind these advanced ideas. In July 1934, Hitler and the elite of the Thule and Vril secret societies invite the inventor Victor Schauberger to work with them. His legendary implosion engine is capable of producing light, heat, and mechanical motion with only air and water. They needed one thing from him: to create an engine for flying discs. An agreement was reached, and after 5 years, in 1939, a prototype of the Vril disc with Schauberger's engine rose into the air. Here, a rare photograph is preserved showing a test flight of a winter camouflaged disc. Progress with the techno-magical discs was extremely slow. With a lack of experience and field specialists, they were forced to make extraordinary decisions. To develop the super disc, Sonderbureau 13 was brought in. This special scientific research unit of the SS engaged in very delicate subjects, like the study of unidentified flying objects. Even with top scientists and test pilots, the project came to a standstill, never moving forward again. Everything was top secret. I spoke to German professor Hermann Oberth, counterpart to our Tsiolkovsky. He was the teacher of Werner von Braun, and I asked him about flying saucers. He said, "Yes, I have heard of them. I have knowledge concerning them." But the SS oversaw that, and we could not discover what our colleagues in Berlin were busy with. At the end of 1942, a lightly armed flying disc took to the air, named the Vril 1 or Jager, with a diameter of 11.5 meters. It's alleged that before the war's end, 17 types of flying disc were made, but one should be skeptical of such claims. I do not think that they had a whole collection of flying discs, maybe a few copies, that's all. The Germans wanted to use them as spying devices. When you look side-on, it's almost invisible. The generals who took part in the Battle of Kursk and 2 Soviet Union heroes I knew personally, a pilot and a tank commando, described to me what they saw. A disc hung in the sky during the Kursk battle. What was it? They did not know. Neither the Germans nor Russians recognized it. The saucer wasn't made by us, I assure you. It's true, I know Russian aviation history very well. Among these disc drawings and photos is a saucer identified as the Haunebu. Data on the discs reads like science fiction. According to descriptions, they used an alternative source of energy, the so-called converter of Hans Kohler, which required no fossil fuel. It was even planned to take the Haunebu 3 disc type into space. Hard to believe? Who knows? Here's a trophy photo. The strange pilot suit suggests flights were scheduled to take place, if not in space, then at least the stratosphere. In the seized archives, another mysterious document was discovered. It was a blueprint for a huge 139-meter-long cigar-shaped ship called Andromeda, with hangars for 5 of the flying discs of the Haunebu and Vril type. The purpose of this vehicle? Some believe it was designed for long-term spaceflight. There's another simpler explanation, that it was a project for an underwater container, which could be used to transport goods, equipment, and technology for the secret bases of the Third Reich, including the Antarctic. According to American intelligence, by the war's end, the Germans had 9 research enterprises developing and testing flying discs. Investigations revealed that 8 of these factories, along with scientists and key figures were successfully evacuated from Germany, while the ninth was destroyed. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens recalls, "We had classified information that some of these research enterprises were transported to Antarctica, to the place called New Swabia. At least one disk research company was transported to that location. Another went to the Amazon, and a third to the north coast of Norway. They were evacuated to secret underground facilities." But the Third Reich didn't have enough time to implement this grandiose plan. It seems by the war's end, techno-magical disk development never reached the industrial production stage. The disks encountered in Antarctica in 1947 were probably not the same disks. Perhaps they were German disks, flying on classical principles, ones that had already been developed by the Third Reich, perhaps as a fallback to their techno-magical projects. A few such prototypes had already been made. Some proved themselves well. It was a giant technological leap, and Germany's opponents weren't even close. But far from the kind of flying discs that the Reich leaders had in mind, those prototypes created by the Germans could only fly in the air, at the extreme, perhaps fly over a liquid or solid surface, the same as we have now, flying on a cushion of air like a hovercraft. The reason for this was they were all ventilator-type flying objects. They have an advantage over conventional aircraft. These sources don't go into a tailspin, as they're very easy to operate, but not designed for high speeds and of a very poor quality. One of the most advanced prototypes, the so-called Belonzo flying disc, was tested for the first and last time on February 14, 1945, near Prague. The lift power was created by the silent flameless engine of Victor Schauberger. Reports say the unpiloted disc reached a height of 15 kilometers in 3 minutes, with a horizontal speed of 2,200 kilometers per hour. The flying disc proved it can hang in the air and fly back and forth without reversing. A success? Absolutely. But war was now on German territory. Not waiting for German territorial occupation, the Nazis destroyed any non-conventional prototypes they couldn't evacuate. The only example of the Belonzo disc was also destroyed. The developer of its main engine, Victor Schauberger, later recalled, "The model, tested in February 1945, was built in collaboration with world-class combustion engineer experts from Mauthausen concentration camps. Then they were returned to the camp. For them, this was the end." It was Kittel who had the disc prototype blown up. So these beautiful pictures, depicting flying discs above an Antarctic base, are an artist's fantasy. Other drawings and photos are suspect. They were made to test parts of the disc prototype within certain parameters or were part of presentations to the authorities for funding purposes. It's vital to credit the German scientists and engineers who achieved huge successes. The Third Reich's leap in science and technology wasn't accidental. Combining scientific research with an analysis of ancient knowledge brought incredible results. However, the defeat the Nazis suffered was not accidental. For the Grail Cup isn't just a symbol of ancient knowledge, but also a centuries-old moral code. This code, the Nazis deliberately rejected. Many legends and rumors are associated with the discs of the Third Reich. In addition to these stories, there are also tales of German discs flying out of Antarctic waters in 1947. Regarding the sources that emerged from the water witnessed in the 1940s and nowadays, the recorded sightings of flights of unidentified flying objects emerging from seas, oceans, lakes, etc. I am sure that in 1947, the Germans could not have had such technology, and neither could any country in the world. But if the Germans did not attack the American expedition in 1947, who did? Emerging out of the water, shining saucers, spheres, cigar-like objects in the polar and surrounding areas are not unusual facts. The northern countries, Central and South America, Australia, South Africa, everywhere, unidentified flying objects are observed. Reports on them were regularly received by USSR Navy intelligence. As a commander in Soviet Navy intelligence, I regularly received reports on such objects detected by witnesses. It would be incorrect to think that unidentified flying objects were only observed in the north. They were also observed across the Atlantic, even in the South Atlantic, near Antarctica. One particular case I am familiar with was where they were observed in the area of the islands of South Georgia. Emerging from beneath the waters, fishermen saw an object. They managed to take a photograph, as it is shown here on these pictures. Despite the strong wind, the object remained static for a long time. Clearly, it wasn't a cloud or a balloon. Over the islands of South Georgia, very strange flying objects were observed. Here's the evidence from one case. This disc hung over the island and was visible for a long time during daylight, just before sunset and just after sunset, for around 1.5 hours to 2 hours. The object had a symmetrical circular shape, and within it was a visible isosceles triangle. At night, this triangle not only shone, but lights were observed at the base of the two corners, as if the object had a working engine. However, the object remained in the same spot all the time. Observation of this object occurred in 1979. 3 years before, in 1976, Japanese researchers using the latest equipment detected 19 round objects, which dived from space into Antarctica and disappeared from the screens. Who were they and where did they go? We've now answers to such questions. In the late 80s, a scientific sensation was created by American astrophysicist Kip Thorne and his colleagues' work. They substantiated the possibility of nearly instantaneous movement in space and time travel. They put forward the idea of wormholes and black holes, all extremely intriguing. According to which, black holes are located at close distances to our planet and take the form of these wormholes. These wormholes can be used for intergalactic and interstellar travel. Other scientists suggest their work has significant practical characteristics, specifically building time travel devices, ensuring intergalactic travel. Kip Thorne concluded that near to Earth, there's an entrance into a wormhole leading to the star Vega. At that time, without a doubt, the Americans already knew very well the way in which the appearance and disappearance of UFOs takes place in the atmosphere of our planet. In 1992, construction began in Alaska of a powerful radioelectronic complex called HARP. Officially, it was to study the ionosphere and the development of missile defense systems. Clandestinely, it was to develop new weapon types, geophysical, weather, and psychotropic. In essence, a massive beam cannon, a type of global microwave oven. In addition to this, there was something else. Today, we can safely assume that the main purpose of this station is the search for the entrance to the wormhole, which means the Americans came to the conclusion that in this polar region, the entrance to the wormhole is located. The station's radio waves allow it to determine the wormhole's configuration, then trace it back and find where the entrance and exit is. In 1998, the complex in Alaska was put into action. An identical transmitter is built in Norway. On its way is a third, more powerful one in Greenland. In the early 90s, technical capabilities made it possible to focus only on one site, the Alaska portal, as an entrance and exit, to observe the movement of UFOs on our planet. There was no need to install tracking stations across United States territory or other territories. Control of just one portal was enough. However, Earth has two poles. What is the role of each in terms of this theory? Well, for example, they use it both for entry and exit through Alaska, or use the portal to enter and leave Antarctica, and vice versa. Through Antarctica, the UFO emerges into the atmosphere of our planet, and through Alaska, the North Portal, they leave the planet. The theory of tunnel effects does not contradict the fact that the North Pole of our Earth is the entrance and the South Pole of the Earth is an outlet that links our planet with other planets and stars on the level of energetic information. It's possible our poles' properties are used by unidentified flying objects to communicate with other parts of the universe. In any case, it should be a subject for serious study. It's no surprise concerning the well-known fact, namely, most of the staff on the American Antarctic stations are personnel of the United States National Security Agency, employees of American military, technical intelligence, electronic intelligence, and Central Intelligence Agency employees. These categories represent the main research personnel on American Antarctic stations. Perhaps the scientists of the Third Reich also inferred the Arctic and Antarctica were not just Earth poles. Perhaps it's no coincidence that in Nazi Germany, the hollow Earth theory, where the poles were represented as gates to the stars, was so popular. Perhaps at this bizarre idea's heart, a vague understanding was reached, something akin to recently discovered wormholes. Along with the possibility of space and time travel, this may be why Antarctica attracted Germans to its shores. The sixth continent continues to keep its secrets. New questions are raised, and over the years, this list hasn't got any smaller. What happened to the research to build flying saucers? Did it stop after the war, or continue in secret places around the globe? Is it correct to attribute modern secret developments to all UFO sightings? UFOs were observed long ago, even during the time of Alexander of Macedon. What kind of objects emerged from the water, attacking Admiral Byrd's expedition? Great unknown beings, whom the Germans strove passionately to cooperate with. What is it? Myth? Or real-life existing forces that for thousands of years have conducted their invisible activities on our planet Earth?